Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Right, so we are going to be starting with our bi-yearly ranking videos this time, and this time I have also prepared a schedule for you guys, or well, maybe not necessarily a schedule, but basically a sequence I will be uploading these videos. Right, so we're going to start with 2021 champion rankings, this is going to be the first video of, that is going to be 3 videos in total, as in the worst champions of 2021 ranked, then the, average Joes, and then your top champions of 2021. Then we're going to take a look at 2021 buffs, at the worst ones, at the best ones. Then we're going to rank all the classes, in my personal opinion, from weakest to strongest, and that is going to be the sequence. We're going to be uploading our class top 10 videos, so 1 for each class. Then we're going to get to the big mashup of top 15 champions in the game, which is often always a very controversial video, and then we're going to update the tier list and finish off these ranking videos. So there's going to be a ton of these opinion videos coming out, and keep that in mind. These are my opinions and my only. I do not even want to consider them as some sort of hard truths or facts, and you shouldn't either. This is the way I see the game, which champions I personally appreciate more and I think are better, which have been more successful additions or edits in the game. And if you do not think the same way as I do, then that does not mean that I'm trying to insult the honor of your family. I do not hate you, and I hope you do not hate me for not thinking the same way as you do. Right, that being said, let's jump to May, where we can filter out all of the 2021 champions. And immediately looking at these champions, you can notice one very obvious thing. That 7 years down the line, with 7 years of practice creating champions, Kabam still has not gotten quite the balance down. This year, we definitely see some champions that make you question whether they should exist in a game or whether they maybe are just too OP. And then you see some champions who you just look and laugh at, who are standing side by side, holding hands with Groot, sitting on a tree, kissing with a Groot, because they're just that bad. They might have a ton of abilities, but none of them do anything worthwhile, and they will just never get looked at unless they get reworked. So it is kind of surprising, In a couple of previous years, I thought for majority of the point, we have reduced the ceiling of the top champions, like we don't get new Quakes and Ghosts and stuff like that. But we have also increased the floor level of how bad is the worst champion. In 2021, Kabam proved that no floor level is too low, and they can go down to the basement as well if need be. So that is where we're going to start. In my personal opinion, the worst champion of 2021, and there were actually several candidates fighting for that, but I think the worst champion is Psychoman. I don't think I have seen anybody actually kind of invest and try and bother with this champion. Now, there could have been a potential small cult following for Psychoman had they left that infinite heavy special 2 spam in game, which is not a good thing to be in the game, but given how weak Psychoman hits, I think they could have just left it in. It's kind of like a funny thing that they released him with an overpowered mechanic where you could consistently power and special lock the opponents and basically just spam your heavy and level 2s and do it consistently and repeatedly. And they took that away from the worst champion of the year. I can see why, but it's just kind of funny that you kick a puppy while it's down. Because that's what Psychoman is. His damage is pathetic. There is a lot of decent good elements in Psychoman's kit, but none of them are even worth learning or knowing about, just because none of them are quite effective enough. And even if you use 1 or 2 of his abilities well enough, his rotation is convoluted and impractical, and his damage is just quite pathetic, which ultimately comes down to it. If the damage is so bad, then no abilities can really save him. And Psychoman's damage is so bad. Ultimately, I do think he is the weakest addition to the contest. I do think he has maybe some redeeming qualities, but all of them are made in null and void due to absolute pathetic lack of damage. Haven't seen him used anywhere. You know, some of the other weaker champions can at least be worthwhile defenders or pained in the bum in some quests and stuff like that, or address some specific problem fights. Psychoman doesn't really do any of that, and you don't really see him placed on defense, or you don't see people struggling with, oh my god, this Psychoman is so hard. It's just worthless. Right, the second worst champion in 2021, and again, we don't really have to look far. Super Skrull, a champion with powers of all of the members of Fantastic War, but significantly more shit than each and every single one of them. Actually, I was quite excited when I saw Super Skrull, because on paper he looked somewhat decent. And currently, Fantastic Four is kind of proving themselves to be aging really, really well, bar Invisible Woman. I think Thing is having somewhat of a resurgence. Mr. Fantastic is an absolute monster now that he got the value update, and Human Torch has always been extremely useful. So the core 3 members are super powerful in Science class, and had Super Skrull been a good addition to the contest, that could have elevated Fantastic Four to even higher level, which I would have absolutely loved. Unfortunately, he's just bad, no matter the way you look at it. He is somewhat annoying on defense, and I'm saying that as someone who has to fight this guy every single Alliance quest in Map 8 now. He really is quite annoying. And he was quite annoying in some of the 7.3 and I think 7.4 beta as well. That Falter can trip you up, and then obviously his level 2s and power gains and everything else that you have to deal with the guy is just quite frustrating. If they give him any extra power gain at all whatsoever, then he can be quite scary opponent to go up against. But all that scariness absolutely immediately disappears when you actually start using the champion, realizing that doing the full convoluted rotation of getting plenty of fury buffs, dropping level 1, converting them into armor ups, then building up to level 2 and converting your armor ups into more furies, thus unlocking his Nova Fists or whatever, and you do fuck all. There are like 100 champions in this game who do way more, way easier, and that's the be all end all. There are, you know, some glimpses of useful utility, like his Undermine remains to be one of the more potent abilities against Penny Parker, but the champion is just so bad that nobody's using him for that. But that Undermine ability is quite cool. Access to armor ups, furies, he has a couple of immunities, and in general, you know, access to power gain. There are some decent things in it. That's why he didn't look as tragic from the ability description as he turned out to be. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, all the abilities are just quite weak. So, all in all that put together, Super Skrull, the second worst champion 2021. Okay, now moving on, the third worst champion. And unfortunately, the third worst champion, in my opinion, is also the quite possibly the best looking champion of 2021. Now, Purgatory is basically an alternate version of Morningstar. If she had won the sword and gained the power. So naturally, you know, you thought she'd be more powerful than Morningstar. At the very least, you know, it would kind of behoove to be that way canonically. Unfortunately, gaining the Sword of Souls, or whatever it is called, took away the bleed immunity and made her weaker. I don't know. Either way, the problem with Purgatory is, again, there's just too much that's not good enough. A lot of those abilities seem relatively promising, but you just don't feel it when it counts. Like, when you have your Demonic Rampage passive active, you gain the 3000 attack, but without any other damage modifiers, without ability to, like, armor break effectively, or gaining precisions and cruelties, or anything like that. That 3000 attack feels weak. And, you know, special attack, if activated during Demonic Rampage, each hit regenerates 10% of the damage dealt. It turns out that even with Liquid Courage Double Edge active and all that other good stuff, you regenerate like 2% of the health and recoils 5%. So this regen's effectively pointless. The regen's here. And that basically kind of goes with most of these abilities. And what makes using Purgatory way worse is the same problem that you have with Mr. Sinister. You can't really control which abilities you will have access to when, because that all depends on which class opponents you get to fight along the way. And it's just way too much planning and effort, and it's way too situational for you to access, you know, significant pieces of utility, because class-based abilities that she gains are important. These utility bits, you know, they could potentially save the character if you could access them on demand in each fight by doing specific things or something of the sort. But you can't. You need to rely on which champion you defeat and stuff like that. And then on top of that, you don't even get to keep those abilities for more than 2 fights. And that means that if you need to use her consistently, then you can't guarantee that you're going to be able to maintain the abilities that are actually important to you. So all in all, gorgeous looking champion, just quite useless one. Now, and keep in mind, when I'm criticizing these champions, I am quite harsh, and I'm not saying you shouldn't rank them if you like them. This is a game. If you enjoy using a champion, it doesn't matter if a champion is good or bad. Rank them, have fun with them. It's just that I cannot, you know, with a serious, straight face, sit in front of you guys and tell that that is a good champion and you should rank up Purgatory or Psychoman, something like that. No, they're bad. They're objectively bad compared to each other. Right, let's move on to the spot number 21. So 4th worst champion. And this might sound actually a bit surprising, and I'm going to do it to Mangog. And the problem with Mangog is that he's absolutely mistuned. His kit is actually better than most, and I personally kind of like his rotation. So I have this guy at 6-star rank 2, and I took him up to rank 2 just because I found him quite fun with that heavy charge level 2 power drain into another heavy kind of thing. Mangog is one of those examples where you have critical error in damage tuning. You see, it's a Mystic champion that's kind of meant to be played with Liquid Courage Double Edge in order to kind of like get the big damage out, and he has abilities that should theoretically support it. The problem is that they tune his damage with the idea in mind that you are running Liquid Courage Double Edge, which would be fair enough. There are other champions like that in the game, and they work. Why doesn't it work for Mangog? Well, it's actually quite simple, because all of his utility effectively is on his level 1, right? And you can't sustain spamming level 1 if you have recoil active. So you either need to choose in between Mystic champion that does moderately decent standard amount of damage. His damage is not bad. His damage is not insanely amazing. If you have Liquid Courage Double Edge recoil active, and if you're able to do the level 2 rotation. But then if you need to use level 1, you get eaten away by recoil. So one would think, okay, take away the recoil. And that even further takes down his damage. And at that point, he becomes one of the weakest hitting champions in the game ever. Think 5-star rank 3 or 5-star rank 4. Spamming level 1 took 1,000 hits against Winter Soldier. I have a video somewhere on channel just to showcase that. His damage output depends whether you are able to spam that level 2. Level 2 basically has very little to no utility. All of his special, cool, amazing things are on level 1. And you can't ever use it. Because, yeah, you're either gonna eat yourself away with recoil if you keep spamming that, or you're just gonna not do any damage at all whatsoever. And that's kind of the biggest problem with Mangog. There are good ideas behind it. It's just, I believe he's way undertuned. I think he was meant to be a Mystic damage powerhouse champion if you use the level 2 rotation with Liquid Courage Double Edge active, and he still should have remained a solid damage output champion if you use level 1s and no Liquid Courage Double Edge. But they did not do that to him. They overtuned his damage, I'd say, by 100%. He should be hitting probably twice as hard as he is. And this is the end result. He kind of sucks. Still somewhat decent on defense. That's one of the reasons why he's here. And the reason why the next champion is higher is largely also defense. It's America Chavez. Now, America Chavez is bad offensively. She's fun. I haven't used her too much, but I enjoy using her. What's not to like? You know, you spam your heavies, you spam your specials, get a ton of power, and it's quite interesting. The problem is that there's absolutely nothing she does that you care for. Like, all of this text, all of these lines of text are kind of useless, you know. For a Mystic champion, she doesn't have any buff control, or hardly any buff control. As a super huge downside, you basically demand opponent to have a lot of buffs active if you want to do a lot of damage. So, you know, why let them have buffs if you can bring in any other Mystic champion, nullify the buffs, and do a ton of damage? It's just, the entire champion doesn't make sense. Not at the slightest in its current configuration. Again, if they made her like super mega damage dealing champion, maybe. But the way she is right now, no immunity, zero utility, a bit of fun. Admittedly, she is quite fun to use. She is, however, quite tricky on defense. And that's why I'm ranking her as 20th. Because I've seen a lot of America Chavez's ranked. And I actually got nearly to ranking her as well. But one of my battle group mates saved me from that. Because people take her up for Alliance War defense. Because she's actually low-key one of the hardest defenders in Alliance War side now. And even if it's not Alliance Wars, like notoriously America Chavez in 7.3 was one of the hardest defenders, where basically she just got a ton of power. And you really kind of need to know what you're doing against her on defense. So offensively, she's absolute bucket. Not worth the piss the bucket could hold. Defensively, she's quite good. Therefore, this is where she ends up. Let's move on to spot number 19. Spot number 19 is going to go to one of the more recent champions, and it's going to be Cersei. Now, full disclosure, there are a few champions that are released this year that I'm not that familiar with. Those champions include Cersei, Icarus, Null, primarily, maybe Nimrod as well. Because I do not have those champions at higher star levels and highly ranked. I do have Cersei, but I haven't played with her that much. All in all, I think Cersei can work as a decent defender, but again, she can be countered relatively easy at this point. And when we look at her as a champion, she can get decent damage output, just like pretty much all the Cosmic champions. But when it comes to utility, well, there's hardly any. You know, you can be saved by glancing now and then, which is cool, but all of those are buffs that, you know, can get nullified and stuff like that also. And you can get some healing in, but all in all, she's a champion, again, similarly like Chavez, even, where you do a ton of things and there's a ton of abilities that don't really do stuff. You can like stun the opponent, but those are the things that, you know, your special 2 or 1 stuns the opponent. Those are the abilities that champions in 2015 had. You have access to Fury. Okay, that increases your damage, or you can heal a bit. But you just don't really do anything. You have this entire transmutation buff thing, and your specials can go unblockable and stuff like that, but it just means very little. Like, there is very, very, very little reason to use her above any other decently hard-hitting Cosmic champion. Just bland. Like, that's actually a quite large source of frustration for me, is when Kabam keeps designing champions that have like 200 lines of ability text, and it amounts to nothing. It's kind of like that here. That much text that could have been replaced with, you know, 1/5. One special attack heals, one special attack gains Furies, or that special attack refreshes the Furies, or something like that, and, you know, a chance to glance or something. And she would effectively be the same champion, because there's not much to her. So here we are. Maybe I'm wrong and too harsh on Cersei. Maybe, you know, eventually she's going to become more popular. But I just think she's extremely forgettable, extremely bland, unimpressive, and kind of tedious to play even, so I'm not gonna rank her higher. I don't think she's like as useless as like Super Skrull or something, because she can actually do decent damage, but I don't think she's good either. And moving on past Cersei, I'm gonna be putting in Jubilee. Jubilee is actually a very sad placement here. So Jubilee is in spot number 18. And Jubilee was one of the champions I really wanted added for a really, really long time. And I'm kind of upset that they did. One of those never meet your heroes moments, because everything that they did with Jubilee, I really, really dislike. Jubilee is a champion with like 40 different abilities, and none of them good enough to use Jubilee. As in, like, she has access to slow, but other champions access slow faster and better and easier. Then she has access to taunt, but we have other champions that do more and can access to taunt. She has access to shock debuff, but you're going to use Black Widow Deadly Origins or something if you need shock people. And that pretty much goes with anything and everything she does. She's not Jack of all trades, master of none. Kind of like a frequently used phrase. It fits here, but I don't even want to call her Jack of all trades. She's kind of like a clown of all trades. Now, don't get me wrong, if a new player pulls Jubilee, she can be plenty useful and plenty helpful. Also, if you do like Jubilee and you do enjoy using Jubilee, I am 100% sure that you can find ways and reasons to use her. She's by no means not as bad as champions that I have discussed previously. This is kind of like a step up in the quality of the champions. Jubilee is perfectly adequate champion. Just not a good one. It's not a good one. She's quite finicky to play, and even if you do learn how to play her, you get the sense of limitation where you sacrifice damage for utility, and then it's fairly tricky to kind of like maintain the piece of utility that you're interested in, and it's just, again, none of it really seems worth it. She has ability accuracy reduction that's mediocre. She has very mediocre power control. She has very moderate amounts of damage. If you get lucky with crits, it's decent. If you don't, it's not. You know, she can do things, but for the most part, if you have options, Jubilee's not the girl you'll call. Right. And spot number 17. And spot number 17 is possibly going to be the most controversial one. Spot number 17, I'm going to give it to Kraven. And this is a champion I definitely know the least about of all the 2021 champions. I could be very, very wrong here. He might be better. But so far, everything that I have seen from him in deep dives, in CCP breakdown videos, I got my 4-star and 3-star from Arena milestones as well, so I've messed around with him a little bit. And I do like some aspects of him, but there are some very big critical mistakes that become evident with Kraven. And one of the bigger mistakes is the fact that you are often entirely in the mercy of AI. And on top of that, you have very little AI manipulation tools available outside of when opponent's trapped. When opponent is trapped, Kraven has a crazy thing, that interaction of root mechanic where AI starts throwing heavy attacks or blocking or whatever. That's insanely useful. They'll never throw special attacks and stuff. But when AI is not trapped, when the opponent is not trapped, you have no way to manipulate AI, and you effectively need to basically beg AI to cooperate with you. And there is nothing you can do, I think, to guarantee successful kind of rotation with Kraven. And even if everything goes your way, you still need to be very fast, and there's very little room for error to kind of like refresh your bleeds and actually accumulate that damage. And it just doesn't feel good enough. I think Kraven is like beta version of like a new breed of a champion. I think quite often Kabam kind of introduces a new mechanic, beta tests it in one champion, and then releases the second champion, you know, that's properly tested. Similarly, kind of like Professor X is looked at as Ebony Maw 2.0. Or Professor X is kind of like what Ebony Maw should have been, in a sense, because they're very similar character models, ability-wise, with the falter, everything else. It's just that Professor X is actually a champion that functions properly. It's similarly to how we get this slowing time mechanic with Hawkeye, and I would be willing to bet $10 that is going to be used for Quicksilver at some point in future, or any other speedster that joins the contest, and we're going to see more of that mechanic. And first they just introduce a little bit of it to kind of test what it does, whether it works in a game, and how players react to it. And I think that is Kraven with this whole routing thing. I don't think he, as a champion, is a success. I think he's interesting enough for him to have some following. I just don't think at the moment, with my limited amount of knowledge, that he's going to be wildly used or a popular champion. I might be wrong. And I'll be the first to put my hand up if that's true. But right now, this is where I'd kind of put him. I definitely think he's better than, you know, your Psychomans, your MCOCs, and your Cerseis and stuff like that. I also don't think he is quite necessarily as useful enough as, I don't know, Nimrod or Silver Centurion or Mr. Negative and stuff like that. So unfortunately, he has spot number 17, and, well, you can call him King of the Noobs or King of the Weaklings. Because I put him as a 17th worst champion this year. Right, that is it. I have taken quite a lot of time. I'm going to try and make next videos quicker, but let me know what you guys think about the rankings so far. Kidding. Right, here are going to be the rankings and the end. 2021 worst champions. Right, so we have the Psychoman, Super Scroll, Purgatory, MCOC, Chalice, Cersei, Jubilee, Kraven. And for the next video, obviously, I'm going to continue writing them down just to keep you guys interested. Right, so tomorrow we should be taking a look at spots number 16 till 9th, something like that. Either way, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya.
Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about